In a world full of turmoil, despair, and darkness, you need to carry the light. Season 3 of the Get Attitude podcast is where we will ignite your mind, your heart, and your attitude. And welcome to the Get Attitude podcast, Season 3, Carry the Light. And ladies and gentlemen, we have somebody that's going to bring light to your day today. Our special guest is a best-selling author, speaker, most importantly, a mentor and a coach. And she's going to mentor and coach you over the next 40 to 50 minutes. And she does that by using something called Mindset Mastery. And the Mindset Mastery helps her promote and helps you bridge the gap when it comes to wellness initiatives. It helps you get unlocked. It helps you get fired up and ready to go. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce our special guest today of our Get Attitude podcast, Season 3, where we introduce you to people who carry the light. And it's the one and only Dr. Pat. Dr. Pat, welcome to The Gap.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I just am so happy that we got connected, and we'll just start here. I love the title of your book. You know, having a best-selling book is hard to do, but boy, when you got the title, it can really help. Why are you sick, fat, and tired? You know, so many people, when we talk about living in darkness, they're sick all the time. They're overweight, and they got no energy. And so you are here to show us the light and carry the light on how to become healthy, thin, or in shape, we should probably say, and full of energy. So Dr. Pat, tell us a little bit about the book and tell us why you chose that title, and maybe a couple quick thoughts on how to bridge the gap from the title of your book.
Well, that's a loaded question, but you know, in 1996, I retired from active practice and I moved to Boston. And when I did that, I moved right downtown, right into the thick of things where the financial district is and the harbor. So there's always something going on. And it was also 10 degrees cooler on the harbor in the summertime than it was in the Back Bay of Boston. So what I did in my time off, I started to write, and I would, go to the gym, and periodically I would go into this area called Post Office Square. And in Post Office Square was where all the financial people came and hung out for their lunch, and they had this really beautiful, it was a beautiful, beautiful place. You had like Charles Schwab's on one side, you had the two twin towers in Boston, Harbor Towers, and you also had the King and the Queen for the financial district there also. And so it was just really pretty. Wisteria was growing. But my observation was that there were so many people who were sick and they didn't know it. And it was like nobody home. You would talk to people and you would ask them, like, tell me how you're doing, and they would tell me all sorts of things. It was amazing what people will tell you if you just ask them a question. And so the other thing that I noticed, from living in Boston, from being on the Cape, and where I lived, my office was on Cape Cod, was that in Boston, with all these people, I did a lot more reading. So I was reading a lot more research at the time. And I read a CDC article from 2010 that had this alarming statistic in it. And the statistic was that out of everybody that they tested in this American study, everybody had dangerous chemicals in them, 212 of them. None of them were missed. And I'm going, wow, lifestyle, how people were thinking, what they were eating, how they were doing their life, and the stress in their life was killing them. I go, for what? And then, and then I would ask a lot of other different questions during that time with people. I saw one guy one day walking that had this kind of greasy kind of sweat. And I walked up to him, I said, "You're not feeling very good, are you?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Why don't you go to the hospital?" And he said, "Well, I got to work." And I said, I go, "You can't work when you're dead."
Right.
I said, let's go to the hospital, and I called a cab, threw him in, and around 3 months later, something like that, this guy walked up to me. I didn't recognize him. And he said, "It's you." And I said, "You what? Who are you?" And he said, "You're the one that put me in the cab to go to the hospital." He goes, "Thank you. You saved my life."
Wow.
And I just went, wow. I go, thanks a lot. And I go, I'm so glad. He said, you saved my life. And he said, he goes, you're a miracle worker. And he walked away. Never asked me my name, never asked me what I did. He just wanted to thank me, which was perfectly fine.
Oh my God.
And yeah, it's true. And so, but I had this experience, but when I was up there, just like intaking a lot of information, I had a lot of contacts when I went to Boston. And so that was a great place. But what I realized is that I couldn't remain retired. And because I had that, I'm thinking, wow, you have the ability to really connect with people very quick. I come from the Midwest, so we talk to everybody. And so you just talk to somebody, you can find out a lot of information from them, and you can help lead them in the right direction. So my whole time that I was in Boston, I rarely told anybody I was a physician. I was decompressing from working so hard before, and I just wanted to go do something and have fun for a couple years, and while I was doing that. So it was great. And then I recently come across a statistic about 3 or 4 years ago that said 50% of our population in the United States is going to have some chronic illness or disease.
Yes.
So when I read that, I started thinking about, how do I put everything that I know in a book? And as I had some guy tell me years ago, he goes, you're going to write a book. I said, you're crazy. I'm not going to do that. And I go, when I retire, I'm just going to retire. I just want to go find a beach, do a little chiropractic on the sideline, and get a good suntan. But that never panned out. So I wrote this book. I was thinking about, like, how could I serve masses of people and get my hands on masses of people with them not having to know me, and then getting something out of the deal. So the book, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired, tells you your starting point in your health journey. It works as an advocating tool. It works as a workbook, and it also works for you, because when you go someplace like a country you've never been before, you always get a tour book. Most people are not familiar with their baseline in their body and what their foundational line looks like. So that Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired, in my women's business group at the time when it went to publish the first edition, this woman said, I'm not sick, I'm not fat, I'm not tired, I'm not buying your book. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. You just gave me an idea. If you're fat, basically, you can look in a mirror. Right. And if you're tired, but you do not know if you're sick. The definition of health by Webster's dictionary is, all your organs are functioning 100% of the time. Unfortunately, you don't know that. Mm-hmm. And there's no process that does not require time. And so when you're on the sick part and you don't know that you're sick, as far as the statistic for pre-diabetes in this country, 1/3 of the population knows it, and it's symptomless.
Right.
It's like, oh yes, I'm pre-diabetic. I don't have that. You wouldn't have necessarily. A lot of times you have to have so much dysfunction before a sign and symptom shows up.
How do you know if your baseline is out of whack, or how do you measure your baseline? Is it a blood test? Does it have to do with, are you alkaline or acidic? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about the book, because inside the book is a host of questions that are specific to each organ system in your body, which will give you your weakest link and also will show you where you have your strongest link. And so like a clock, like the one behind me even, like a clock, or a Swiss watch, each one of those pieces have got to work together in order to get to Rome. They all go to Rome. But they have to work together, and they have to work in being consistently working together. When one starts to slow down, then it affects the other organ systems, and your body will pattern out. So you can go a long time without having any symptoms. I mean, look at the brain. They say that, a good portion of it, you never ever use.
Right.
And so before you start to have signs and symptoms in the area that you do use, something has to have been there for quite a while, unless it's incredibly aggressive.
What are the, I know there's a lot to consider in health, but like for our listeners out there who do feel sick, fat, and tired, what are the 3 most important things that they could do in order to not either be sick or feel sick? That's what I would like to know.
Well, they should identify, some simple, basics. And one basic is, hey, tell me, how have you been feeling for the last 2 years, right? And because a lot of people just do their life, right? And they're not reflective for at least a 2 year. But when you ask them that question, they kind of think like, well, that happened or that happened. That's something that's significant. If you take over-the-counter drugs, or, like aspirin even, or other things, the book is a candidate for you. That would make that book very specific for you. And also if you take prescription drugs, because prescription drugs will mask what's going on. It doesn't get to the root problem. In my 38 years of being in this industry, I have seen a lot of people who don't know that they're sick and they end up having a heart attack and dying. And, and so like, looking at being overweight, I can't lose weight. I don't think well. I don't sleep. I can't get enough exercise. I'm so exhausted when I exercise. It doesn't work for me. I don't drink enough water. I know I'm not hydrating well enough. And I don't understand like how to put all the pieces of the puzzle together, like the proper diet part or the proper exercise or the proper sleep. And how do I make sleep hygiene a priority for me? And then, you go into that proper mental attitude and positive mental, proper mindset and proper mental attitude, that whole group. And then you have to have that functioning nervous system where structures function in proper posture, because proper posture houses how your body functions. And you need to be hydrated for all of it.
Right. So posture and hydration, huge in how you feel. I love that. That's so good. And I know you could go forever, but I want to try to get our people some specific tools, answers, formulas, whatever it might be. One thing that my wife and I deal with constantly is we are not good sleepers. And I think a lot of Americans aren't. I can get to sleep for 3 to 4 hours. I wake up and I'm wide awake and my mind's racing. What's your thought on why people can't sleep, and what are the 2 to 3 best things you can do to improve your sleep?
Okay. So I just want to go back to one thing that I didn't say before, because we talked about tests, that the book is a questionnaire.
Okay.
And my rule is that I don't guess, I test. So this is the first test to decide what other blood work that you might need going into the future. So it sets the baseline. Yes. So you have an idea of what's going on in your body, in your health snapshot right now. To answer the question about sleep.
Well, yeah, hold on. So the bottom line is this: I need to buy the book, number one, and I need to test, not guess. And so is there how many different blood tests are there? Like I go in and get my blood work done and they go, yeah, everything checked out, you're fine. But I'm guessing that common blood work is not the type of blood work you're talking about, right?
Well, it could be. Okay. But the thing about blood work is that a lot of physicians, when they read blood work, you have high, low, and you have normal. Yeah. So anything that's in normal for, typical Western medicine, traditional medicine, they consider normal. I don't. Right. I look what's trending high. I look what's trending low. So I want to know if I have a perceived problem, if I'm looking at it and my perception is going like, well, the last 3 blood workup, this is going in this direction. It might still be normal, but you want to know where it's trending. Because then you can do the lifestyle medicine portion of that, where you're looking at diet first, because food is medicine. Yes. Then you're looking at exercise. Then you're looking at targeted supplementation for that specific organ system, so that you can buff it up, and bring it back to a better functioning level, because that might help the other high scores. Because your scores on the questionnaire in the book are either low, medium, or high. Yes. And I look at what's trending up or what's trending down and that type of thing. So you got to know what the big picture of it looks like. And so and there's in functional medicine, lifestyle medicine, there's other blood work that isn't really necessarily typical. But I will give you a really good tip for all your listeners, is that if there is a full panel that you could order instead of the one thing, like if you ever get a thyroid done, you definitively want a whole thyroid panel. You do not want to have just T4. The T4 doesn't tell you anything. It tells you the score of the T4, but you really need to know how that's interreacting, not only in the blood, but also how that gets with and interacts with 3 and gets into the cell. That's where the foundational part of your health is. And that's where inflammation is an issue for people too.
So get the thyroid panel.
Get the full thyroid panel.
Full thyroid panel.
If they do like a liver panel,
yes.
Just say, are you doing the full panel? It gives you better information, because when you have better information, you can make better decisions. And you're making decisions upon real things that are in front of you and not what somebody's speculating about.
Now, were you a general practitioner? Is that what you were, or were you a specialist?
No, my background is I'm a chiropractic sports physician, and I had a teacher that was incredible in nutrition, and I was fascinated by everything that he said. He was so far ahead of his things that he taught. They didn't come out in the news or like, this is the, like, don't buy margarine, buy butter, until 20 years later. But he was saying that like from the get-go. And so he always had, these pearls of wisdom, and it was just, I was like a sponge. Like, tell me more.
And who was this? What was his name?
His name was Dr. Chappell. He was Life Chiropractic at that time, but he was pretty brilliant, and I had 2 other mentors in chiropractic. A teacher, he passed away, his name was Victor Frank, and he always said, what you got isn't necessarily what you got. I mean, you might have high blood pressure, but why do you have high blood pressure?
Sure. Sure.
And what does that high blood pressure relate to? Well, first thing that you know about high blood pressure, it has inflammation. And the more inflamed your body is, the sicker you will get.
And so, because we've been looking at this too. Chiropractic medicine reduces inflammation, I would guess, and really, because I have friends that like do a chiropractor every other week or every month, and they seem a lot more comfortable than me. I'm like, I think I need to start going to get an adjustment every month. Tell me what your thoughts are on that. I mean, for people that feel fat, sick, and tired, would they benefit going to a chiropractor once a month?
They can, but they might need to go more.
Yeah.
If the 5th pillar of health is a properly functioning nervous system, mechanics and structure is function. If you don't have good structure, you can't have good function. Something's going to trigger along the line of where those nerves come from the spine and go to the body. The brain controls and coordinates all functions of the body. That's a medically accepted terminology for all medical professions and all healing professions. We all know that. And it communicates to the body through the spinal cord and through all the nerve endings that goes to every tissue, every cell, every organ.
Wow.
And so if you understand that, then you understand the importance of getting your spine adjusted, because if there's pressure, even a piece of hair on a nerve has been shown to cause nerve interference. And, and if structures function, and, anytime someone tells me that they had low back surgery or they had hip surgery, I'm going, did you see a chiropractor first? Because that pelvis, and if the pelvis has some torque to it, it's easy to take the torque out of it, along with some specific exercises to do, so that you can become more mobile and more functional.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm just thinking this. How do I know if a chiropractor is good in my market? What's the best way to find the best chiropractor? So people that are listening to this going, you know what, that made a lot of sense, Dr. Pat. I want to go find a chiropractor. What's the best way to find a chiropractor?
Well, I think when you go to find a chiropractor, and I think, when I had my office, I got adjusted at least once a week.
Wow.
And if I had something going on, I was there 3 times a week, because I want to get it done and handled. It's like the same thing in sports. When someone injures themselves, they're in PT for 8 hours a day. They don't go like once a week for 12 weeks.
Yes.
It gets handled. You address it and it gets handled. So in finding a good chiropractor, you have to really ask yourself what your objectives are. Like, what is it that you want to get out of going to a chiropractor? Do you want to just move better? Well, you can go to almost anybody for that. And it's just like, but if you want to have the other internal part of health, you're looking for people who have specialization, specifically like in functional medicine and lifestyle medicine. You want someone who thinks outside the box, because if they think that everything exists only in their box, which, and I know there's chiropractors that are like that, and there's like Western medicine doctors, there's everybody in a profession that they're stuck. They have their box, they have their 9 dots, and they don't realize that other solutions are outside.
Well, how do you find those people? I mean,
you ask questions.
You just,
and you got to ask questions. You got to say like, well, like how do I want to know how you treat people. If you really have a hard time finding somebody, call me. You have my you have my contact information on this show. Excuse me. Just call me, and in your area, I can help you choose a better, solution. So that, because to me, it's the challenge is finding the chiropractor. I make it simple, faster, easier, quicker, so you can find the right person, you can get the adjustment that you need, and get on with the rest of your life.
I want you to. You've talked me into it. How can people find you? Is there an email that they can email you at?
You have my website. So my website, there's a way to contact me on there. But what I would use for today is just Ask Dr. Pat.
Right. Ask Dr. Pat.
Yeah. And if you go and at healthteamnetwork.com. And so if you go on my website right there, and if you scroll down to where there's a microphone on the bottom, keep on going, a little bit more right there. And that if you press that button,
I love it.
You can leave me a message and I'll come back to you.
Okay.
And it gets directly to it goes right into my inbox. And then if you leave me a way to get contact with you, I will respond back as soon as possible.
So Dr. Go ahead. Thank you very much. That's great. Talk to me. I'd love to know what your definition of attitude is, and who are your 2 best attitude teachers?
I had somebody in my life who were my 2 best attitude teachers.
Yeah.
So I would have to say Jim Rohn.
Oh, I love it. And
the other person is Les Brown.
Oh, Les has been on our show.
Has he really?
Yes, he has. Cool. You'll have to listen to that.
I'm going to, I was at a meeting in Atlanta, Georgia this January, and the gentleman who was doing the show, doing our program that day, and that his phone rang and he answered it, and it was Les Brown, and he goes, "Hey, Les, say something to these guys."
Pretty awesome.
So it was pretty awesome, and I think I'm going to be seeing him when I'm going to be in Chicago at the end of June at a conference where he's going to be presenting also.
Wonderful.
So I'm looking forward. I love positive people. If there's somebody's got a better way to do it, tell me. I'm not trying to reinvent a wheel or anything else like this. But I think, for those 2 people, that I listen to or go back to, or if I'm stuck or I feel like I'm stuck, I listen to Jim Rohn almost every morning.
Yes.
I either listen to him when I'm still making the alarm, my snooze hit a couple more times, and I always time my alarm clock to do that.
Yes.
So I know that someone goes, drives me crazy. I'm going, well then, go in the other room.
Right.
It's how I do my morning. And so then I listen to around 20 minutes, 25 minutes, something like that. And then I get up and I do my day. Because I think if you start your day with a positive thought, it can change your whole day.
Sure. And
if you, and likewise, if you're doing things like, how can I get in a better attitude? Well, don't watch TV at night before you go to bed. You talked about for the sleep. This is for sleep also.
Yeah, let's jump back to sleep. What's your advice for getting good rest?
Well, I'm going to cover that right now with this too. So it's just turn electronics off, turn your Wi-Fi off, and get some energy busters for your electrical outlets where you're sleeping at. And so what it does is it helps you so that you're not getting bombarded with electromagnetic radiation from an electrical outlet, because even though nothing's in them, they're still firing. And so if you have one of those right behind where you're sleeping, it's aiming right for your head. And then make the room as dark. 68 degrees is a great temperature to sleep in, so you can get more sleep. If you're eating your main meal a little bit earlier, that's a good thing to do. And so if you, take a hot shower, take those. I just found these. I thought these were the coolest things that I found on Amazon, and I think I saw them on a Facebook ad or something like that. And I just opened them up and went, what is this panel of all these different size dots? And so I'm looking at the demonstration, and they put these things that go over the LED lights.
Oh, really?
And those things are enough sometimes to keep you up.
Isn't that
when they're on.
So the listeners that have their phone on their nightstand next to their bed charging with the Wi-Fi on, could actually affect how you sleep.
Well, it's not charging from the Wi-Fi; it's charging from the electrical outlet.
Right.
But it can affect how you're sleeping. And also the other thing is that for your telephone, unless there's some reason why you would have to have it on, you might want to have it on across the room or turn it on to airplane mode. So, and because if that's sitting right next to your head, if you get one of those electric plug, where you're seeing what the voltage is coming out of them,
yes,
and that you can measure that per room, and and you would be really surprised about what is supposedly acceptable. But for me, I don't have anything on around my head of my bed.
Practicing what do you call it? Chiropractic, or I don't know what the name is.
Chiropractic.
Yeah, practicing chiropractic for as many years as you did. What were the most common when people walked in? Was there an overwhelming symptom or condition that you said, man, 1/3 of my people that come in here have the same problem, and that problem is, or was it nothing like that? What I'm trying to do is identify like the two biggest conditions that people walked in over the 38 years where you go, Glenn, half the time it's usually this. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, usually low back pain.
Yep.
Is what they first people would walk in with. And the second thing people would walk in was like shoulder. I'm the shoulder queen. I can fix shoulders.
Okay.
Easy for me. People, I've been covered in offices where I've done a favor for somebody, and one guy offered me, he goes, I'll give you whatever you want if you can fix my shoulder. I said, anything? He said, anything. And I said, gold bullion? He said, can't afford a gold bullion.
Right.
I said, silver? I'll take platinum. I said, I'll fix your shoulder no matter what anyway. And I fixed his shoulder. He was like, wow. I couldn't lift my arm 5 minutes ago, and I have full range of motion. I said, let's ice it, put some stem on it, and then you're all set to go. And then I saw him one other time when I was there. A year later, I was there, and they called up everybody that I ever saw in their office during those times. And he comes in, he goes, my shoulder's killing me again. I can't believe you're here. It's happened 2 days before. And I said, this time it's going to cost you 2 gold bullions and 2 bricks of silver and 2, like platinum or whatever. And so, but it's fun. It's just, to me, fixing shoulders is not complex for me. For some people, it is complex. It's just, I see how the shoulder and the neck are so intertwined. For a lot of things, people are dizzy sometimes just because they have such tight muscles in their neck. So you have to figure out what's going on with that posture, and where's the head sitting over the body that makes that more stress, and that you're constantly having overuse syndrome, in your neck. So you have a strain of some sort.
Wow. Very
and back to the sleep thing. So I'm going to go back to that too.
Sure.
The other thing is having a bed that actually is good for you, and having pillows that are underneath your neck that support your head. So, you want to, if you're sleeping on your side, like being a pillow between your knees or your ankles, something like that. And then also having a pillow underneath your head, so that when you're looking at someone's back, from the base of their skull here, and their spine is basically parallel to the bed.
I see.
And then having the bed come up, feel like it's caressing you and supporting you, and not that you're going into the bed. So a lot of times people buy beds that are too
soft.
Stiff.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Talk to me about your take on I guess attitude. In today's current world, right? You're going around and speaking, you got people reading your book, chiropractic, it's almost a religion, I think. I don't know. I think there's so much great information around that. But when it comes to how people are thinking, and how people are thinking about their health, what do you see as the biggest mistakes, or the biggest I guess misnomers in medicine that maybe people should pay attention to? And again, I think we had talked off air, maybe the 4 steps that you talked about on getting healthy. I'd love to hear that.
Well, one of the things is you have to understand why people get sick in the first place. And so there's three reasons why people get sick primarily. One is trauma, and that's all about inflammation. And so the trauma actually starts for 9 out of 10 children from the birthing process, which they create cervical damage in the neck. And so you start your life, like when you're starting to move your head and make the muscles so that you can move. So trauma, car benders, doing things perpetually on one side. Like I usually always adjust on the left-hand side of the table. When I'm working, it's easier. I'm right-handed, so I can do things that I need to do. And so I always like making myself work from the other side of the table for that type of thing. Then there's toxins from the air that you breathe, the water you drink, the fluids that you use in your office, like clean your office, clean your house, the garden side. You have chemicals that are using that you're inhaling. People who have those air plugs that they plug into the wall, they should throw them out. If you Google it, they are carcinogenic, and they should not be allowed. It's just that how they're still being sold, I have no clue.
And in cars, and the little air.
And in cars, oh yeah,
okay.
They're all chemicals.
Okay.
If you can't, when you go to read labels on food, if you don't understand what you're eating, you shouldn't eat it. And if your cosmetics don't have, if you can't eat your cosmetics, then you shouldn't put them on your face, because 65% of what you put on your body gets absorbed into your body, and it has to be processed. And then the last thing that is the third T for why people get sick is thoughts. And thoughts can undo 5 to 7 times the amount of what you do good to correct the trauma and to correct, which would be chiropractic, and the toxins in your system, making your house more green. So thoughts, when you're ruminating, are keeping you up at night. So I have a chart that I don't have available here, but on this chart, I talk about emotions, like 22 emotions that, come up for your thoughts go into emotions. Your emotions on the right side are all the things that are really highly negative. Like when you're thinking about anything that's the lack of, the anxiety, depression, pain, things, and a lot of those things ends up with fear. And the other side's like on this chart is like the side of manifestation, like when you're in love and you're in your vibe, you're in your groove, you're in your vortex, as Abraham Hicks says. You have all these things going on that are positive for you. All you got to do if you're on the right side of this chart is go, I don't want to be there anymore. Being happy is a better option. And so how I can be happy is I can at least go through 21 days and think of, 21 things, and 3 days, 3 things a day that I can be grateful for. And gratitude is past. It means that it's already happened. So there's things in your life that were positive that happened in your life. You focus on those things, and in 21 days, you can see a huge change in your level of happiness. And it's a choice. When you wake up in the morning, do that positive thought. And so on the thinking part of it, about the attitude, that positive mental, attitude plus positive mindset plus wellness initiatives, which are the first 3, the diet, the exercise, and the sleep, and that will give you success physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, socially, work, home, play, relationships, doesn't matter. But it's having that like mindset. So like, oh, this thing happened. So what can I do about it? It's even for if you want to go to sleep and your mind's going and you feel like you want to clean your closet out for the 20 millionth time. It's like, okay, what can I do about it right now? If there's something you can do about it, turn the lights on, get up and do it. You then get back, sit down, and give yourself permission to go to sleep. Love and then it. If there's still stuff going on, write a list, because it's not going to go away in the next 5 hours.
I love
and
it.
Give yourself permission to go to sleep. It's very, very simple. It's a very, very easy process. I teach that to my clients a lot. And attitude is altitude. So if I perceive, when I was getting divorced, on days that I thought my husband was an absolute idiot, I have to admit that I thought he was an idiot before I even thought those thoughts.
Sure.
And so we had, and we ended up having an amicable divorce, but my attitude had to change because we worked in the same office. And so, and when I went in to go work in my office, because I had a very busy office at the time, whatever I had going on in my life, I left outside the door, because I felt whoever I'm working with, and I still feel this way to this day when I'm coaching and mentoring, you deserve 150% of me. You don't deserve 79%. And a lot of people don't come to work with 50. They're depleted by noontime, let alone at 5 o'clock at night. And then they have nothing left over for themselves, let alone people who really matter to them, like their children and their husbands and their families and their other friends that are surrounding them. So I think that when you talk about attitude, the attitude starts within you. Sure. And it's just like, when someone gave me advice when I went to Europe by myself when I was 27, and, my father said, you don't have to go if you don't want to. And I said, why wouldn't, to me, this is how my thinking was, even at that time, why wouldn't I not want to go? Just because my friends decided not to come. I'm still going.
I love it.
And so he has said, he goes, well, and I said, well, Dad, don't worry. Screaming's universal.
Yeah.
And we could feel him gasp. It's like, like, I can't believe you just said that.
That's,
and so,
go ahead.
And so I went. And what somebody said to me on that trip, my mentor said to me at the time, he said, everything's just an experience. You don't have to hold on to that for the rest of your life. It's just an experience. So when you come from that point of view, it's like you missed your train. It's not the end of the world.
Yes.
If you someone stole your American Express checks, but you got a place to stay, it's just like, it's not the end of the world. Your checks will be replaced. It just means it's maybe protecting you from something else bad happening down the road. So I always look at any interruptions as an opportunity. And the other thing about attitude is anybody who I ever see walking by me, around me, even if it's in the country if someone looks me directly in my eye, I try to make a point of stopping them and having a conversation, or at least saying a really warm hello to them.
I love it. I love it. So I love the fact you just should say it's an experience. Whenever something goes wrong, whenever something diverts you, to just walk through gappers. We call our listeners gappers. Gappers, the next 30 days, try the thing. When things happen wrong to you, go, well, you know what? It's just an experience. I think that's just a great way to frame it. One question we always like to ask our people, because I think sometimes people go, they weren't around. But I always love to know what you learned from your grandparents first. I don't know if you had a relationship with grandma and grandpa on either side. If you did, we always get great quotes from our guests when they think about their grandfolks. And if they didn't, maybe everybody's attitude coaches, their very first two are their parents. So I just love to know a little bit about your family history in that. What did you learn from grandma and grandpa? It only needs to be one, doesn't need to be all four. Like, who was it, and or your parents about attitude?
Well, on my grandmother on my father's side passed away when she was 42, so I never knew her. And my grandfather on my father's side, I thought he was really a tough person. He had no empathy, or it was like when you talked to him, you just said, yes, Grandpa. Right. He just left, but my father was kind of like him, but he was kind of had a little bit more warmth too. And he also had an incredibly dry sense of humor. He always said, if you can't nurture yourself, you can't nurture somebody else.
Love it.
So before you get in a relationship with somebody, he goes, you better be able to take care of yourself first. So I learned a lot about self-sufficiency in my life from a very early age on, because by the time my mother had me, she was done having kids, and my oldest sisters basically raised me. And I had more contact with them. Even though I had contact with my mother, I had more memories of being with my older sister and my third sister especially. But there's always that, that was like part of my siblings were more like my mother. Right. And my sister that I really like, her and I are a lot more like my father as far as our thinking goes. And my father always told me that I could achieve anything that I wanted as long as I just kept to it.
Cool.
And so that was something I learned from like a young kid. And I learned like lessons after they happened. He would always say well, what did you learn from that? Like when I ran away from the house to go see the school because my mother wouldn't take me with my boyfriend across the street, and the cop stopped us, and I didn't believe he was a cop because my dad told me that, people dress up like other people and they want to do harm to children. And so I refused to get in the cop car. I just said, just tell me where Commonwealth Street's at and I'm going to walk. And so that was me at 4 years old. And so my father came home that night. He just sat down outside with me and he goes, you can't play with Mikey for a week. And I said, yeah. I said, but he's just right there. And he goes, well, you can talk to him. You just can't play with him.
Oh my gosh.
He lived across the street, and then he said to me, why did you go anyway? And he goes, and I said, because I wanted to go. And I told him a story about wanting to go play in the playground. And I asked my mother 3 times and she didn't answer me. So I decided to just take matters into my own hand. And then I said, but I wish that I would have done one thing, and I can remember telling him, I didn't look back at my street. So when I was coming back from the direction, the reason why we got lost is because we didn't know what street to turn down, as we didn't look at what the street looked like on the corner that we had to turn. And when I was 5 years old, 4 years old, you kind of learned about reading, but you didn't read most fluently. You didn't really learn reading until you got into, the end of kindergarten, going into first grade and that. So my father just said, he goes, the moral of the story is always look where you come from.
Yeah, ain't that the truth?
And so, but those are just like a couple things, and my grandmother was really, she always said what she did, she regretted in her life was that when she was 80, and people, and men would open doors for her. She said, I wish I would have, because she was just one of those people, I'm on mode, just open the door and keep on moving.
Yes.
She said, I learned to take a breath. She said, she goes, when you walk up to a door, learn to take a breath.
Yeah, I like it.
And that was like one of her, when she was 94, she had that conversation with me.
Very
about when
interesting.
She was 80.
Since we're winding down our podcast now, we do something with every guest called Knowledge Through the Decades, where we're going to walk you through your life and ask you what the attitude lesson is for each decade of your life, if that's okay. So this is meant to be fun, and we're highly edited. So if you don't like your answer, we'll throw it away. And I know nobody wants to give their age, but we'll just keep going until you say, Glenn, I haven't hit that decade yet. And so this is just fun. It's a quip. It's a couple sentences. When I think about this is what I think my attitude lesson was. So when we talk about childbirth and coming into the world, what do you think the attitude lesson is of new birth, rebirth, or a newborn baby?
I think that it's my attitude was freedom.
Right. Interesting.
In one word, freedom. I was out.
Right. I was out of, and isn't that interesting? Haven't had that one before, but freedom is certainly an attitude that I don't know that we cherish anymore or take the time to look, but maybe, just maybe, some of our gappers are living inside the womb of their mother still, right? You talked about the people with blank stares, the unhealthy people. We call them zombies, attitude zombies. You can see zombies everywhere when you walk around. And I think as a metaphor, you know what? Maybe some people are stuck in the womb and they don't feel free enough to change their lives to become not fat and not sick and not tired. So I think that's a great answer. Do you remember being 10? And if you do, that's 4th or 5th grade. What is your attitude lesson? What happened to you? What experience did you have at 10 that you said, you know what, here's the story, and this was my attitude lesson?
Well, Sister Bernadette was my 5th grade teacher, and I was the last of 5 kids, and she taught every one of my siblings.
Oh my God. I'm the last of 5 too. No wonder I liked you.
Well, Sister Bernadette could never get my name straight.
Oh.
And so, for the whole time. So what I learned was that you never taught one. And, for her, because she had that pointer thing with a little rubber thing and walk around. And she would say, Kathy, Jackie, Michael, Patty. Patty. Because everyone called me Patty. And by that time, you forgot what you were supposed to say, whatever she was asking you, because you were so intimidated. So I just learned to stand up for myself.
Okay, so is that because we had a technical glitch and you said, yeah, well, my attitude lesson was standing up for yourself when you were 10. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Love it. So then you turned 20, and so you might have been in college. My guess is you were somewhere in college. I'd love to know where it was, and I'd love to know what your attitude lesson was that you learned at 20.
Well, I was at Eastern Michigan University, and I was studying pre-med there. I took all the courses for pre-med, so someone said, you really should say that you're studying pre-med. And what I learned is that, I kept on fostering, like doing what I love to do. And if I took, my father always was complaining about, why are you taking this class? I said, because I just love it. I mean, this is what I love to do. And science was always an easy venue for me. It's always interests me, like how things work. Why does that work that way? And so, it was a time of it was learning camaraderie and learning to work in environment with people. I had 4 roommates when I was in school. And we lived in a really old house that was famous in Ypsilanti. But I think at 20, it's just like, you're deciding what's my next step? Mm-hmm. And also, learning to collaborate.
Collaboration. Interesting. Yeah. And then you got out, you're now a doctor. At 30, you're probably into your career or just becoming a chiropractor. What was your attitude lesson at 30 that you learned?
Well, when I graduated, I was 31 years old.
Oh, wow.
So, and I got married just before I graduated. And my father did not want me to be a chiropractor. He wanted me to be an electrical engineer.
Of course.
And so that didn't go that way. And so what I learned is that when I made a decision outside of his box, it was my breakaway from my parents.
Aha. Good.
Because my father said, if you're going to go, you're on your own.
I love it.
And I went, great. See you later.
Probably the best thing he ever told you, like it is for most kids, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just I didn't want to go back to Michigan where I live. And I just knew that there was something else out there, and I was going towards where that was. I didn't know where that was going to end up at, but I ended up, going, my ex-husband was French. And so we spent time in France doing chiropractic, and we spent time back in the States before we decided where to settle in the United States. But it was at that time that it was that big thing that I did it, and I was really proud of it.
I love it. And, so many of our gappers, so many people, when you think why people are sick, fat, and tired, it's because they're in the same box. It's because maybe somebody has said, if you do that, don't come back. And when people are never told that, then they sit in that box, and that makes them tired. It makes them sick. It makes them fat. And so my hope for the gappers as you listen to this is to really analyze your life and to be thinking about, have I been sitting in the same box, not just for a year, 5 years, 10 years, but maybe for your whole life? Let's go to 40. Do you remember being 40? You probably had some kids. I don't know. Tell us about 40. And at the age of 40, what was the attitude lesson you learned?
At the age of 40, I was preparing to sell my business. And so, and I had a very successful business. I bought something on the low functional side, and I made it something very special, and was able to, I sold it for around 150% more than what I bought it for.
Good.
And so and that worked out well. And when I was 40 was where I thought, I don't want to live on Cape. I don't want to live someplace. I don't want to die. I said to somebody, I don't want to die on Cape Cod.
Right.
Because I was now single. It was a great place to be married and have kids. And I didn't have kids. I had patients.
Yes.
And so I decided I wanted to go live in a big city. And so at 40, I went to Boston, met a woman whose father was in the Basketball Hall of Fame. Wow. And she invited me to model for this Baroness. And I just asked her a simple question. I said, like, do you think a white, faux fur coat or a taupe faux fur coat? And that's how I met her. And she said, wow, she said, you're perfect for something. Can you come on Saturday too? And she scribbled this out in her name. And when you go to the door, just show them this, and they'll see my name. And so I auditioned to model, and I started modeling in Boston at that time. It was a blast.
I love it.
It was so much fun. And I got to meet like so many people during that time. And I learned about how important connections are during that time also. Because there's a group of people that I knew in Boston that were very connected to like the piping industry, or to the plumbing industry, or to the skyscrapers, and like the cranes, and what that meant to a city, and how financially functional a city was by how many cranes that you could actually see out your window.
Interesting.
From living downtown. And it was interesting to have that connection, and have that being able to get cut in front of line, and get in without having to wait forever to go someplace. It was great.
I'm going to go with reinvention and connection was the attitude that you did.
Thanks for summing that up for me.
Yes, I think you did good. Are you 50 yet?
I am.
All right.
I'm yes. And so by the time I was 50, I decided that I wanted to go learn about acupuncture. And so I decided to go back to school and go to acupuncture school. I was living in Boston. I had private clients that I would see and do, because I always thought that if I could consolidate what I could do with somebody, I could get more done in 5 visits, doing hour visits, than I can in a 2-month or 3-month time span.
Sure.
And so that's what I did when I was up in Boston. I just decided to have private clients, go work out, go model. You
were doing it.
And travel. The airport was only a half hour away from me. And, tickets to go overseas were like $300 round trip at the time. So I'm thinking, this is a no brainer, right?
In
my 50s, I applied to acupuncture school, and I went back to school and I studied in Mandarin.
That is, and so, what I think of there is adventure, right? I mean, maybe when you turn 50, you said, hey, it's time for this flower to blossom, and I'm going to go do all this new, wonderful stuff in adventuring. That's so admirable and cool. And I think so many of our people listening right now is a great opportunity for you to say, what adventure do I have in my life? And it certainly helps you have, you don't feel tired when you're reaching out and adventuring, right? It creates energy. It creates passion in your life. I just think that's great. Did you?
I came up with 2 things during that time. One thing was the Patricia Boulogne Fun and Frivolity Foundation.
Oh, cool.
And so that was all about where do we go next on our next trip.
I love it.
And the other thing was that, I tell people, I said, if you're going to celebrate your birthday's not over until you get your last present. Well, they go, so when does it start? I said, with your first birthday wish.
I love it.
So the year that I turned 50, somebody said to me in Key West, happy birthday. So that year was my gift, because it was a big birthday. I traveled someplace I've never been to every month. I went away for a week. Oh my gosh. Wow. And so, and that was my gift to myself for having a big birthday, and, being able to enjoy it then. Because I always thought, who wants to be 60? When I first time I went to Italy and I was in Venice, I saw these old people, they probably were 50, because I was in my 20s, right? But, when I'm looking at it, thinking that, I said, they can barely get around. It takes them all day long to do St. Marco's Square. I can do St. Marco's Square in a half hour.
Yeah.
And buy a pair of shoes. So,
you did it.
I just thought, I didn't want it to be like that. I wanted to be like, if I had an opportunity, I want to be able to walk up and down steps without assistance. So having my health and being physically, mentally, and emotionally, that foundation was really important to me. So I always practice what I preach.
And you have not hit 60 yet, have you?
I have.
Oh my gosh. Ladies and gentlemen, this gal does not look 60. All right. Well, tell us, when the big 6-0 came, what was the attitude lesson? I
went back to Italy.
Yeah.
And that the adventure wasn't over. But what I like to do is I like to people watch. I like to look at people's posture. I like to look at how people do things. So on that 60th birthday, I would have been a little bit happier just going in one place and taking trains as opposed to driving like a mad person and having to go see that birthday. A friend and I went to Spain, and when we got pulled over by the police because I somehow made a left-hand turn where I wasn't supposed to do it, they tried to give us a fine. And my girlfriend, who was very like, well, let's talk this out, kind of thing. And I said, just pay do you have 150 euros on you? Pay him. Let's get out of here.
Oh my gosh.
Because he took my driver's license and was breaking it. I said, just give him the 150 euros.
Right.
Let's move on. It's just something that happened today. It's not going to be here tomorrow. So, and I got to see a little bit more places. I went and studied Spanish in Barcelona at the time, and walked everywhere. It's a really beautiful city, and I really like doing that. So I still have the zest for being pulled across the pond. I just haven't done that in a while.
I love it. So I'm going to just say that the attitude lesson of 60, as I heard your stories, was that of awareness, becoming more aware of your surroundings and possibly slowing down. Now, don't tell me you've hit 70.
No.
All right. Well, that's good.
This could have gone. I just think I could be 90.
Oh yeah. Well, we've had some folks that have hit it high. So, knowledge through the decades. That was sure fun, Pat. Dr. Pat. I hope you enjoyed it. She hit on, starting out as being being free, standing up for yourself, being a collaborator, breaking out of the box, reinventing. She then talked about the need for adventure, and then lastly, to be aware of your surroundings. So that was just so much fun. I really appreciate you doing that. One thing we always like to do is to let our guests just give your final thought of inspiration, your final thought of hope, just a message that you feel that our listeners could use, that they could use today, that they could use tomorrow, maybe perhaps for the rest of their life. What's your mantra? How do you stay positive? How do you keep your positive mental attitude? And what's your hope for the person that is listening to this show right now?
Well, I will start with the hope. My hope for people who are listening to the show is that they find where they're stuck and break through it. Because if you can take that stuckness and make it into a memory, then it will no longer be reactive in your body, and you won't, which usually results in some type of disease process manifesting later on.
Wow.
So, and so if and that's part of the mindset mastery thing that I do when I'm working with people.
Yes.
Is that we find where that stuckness is. Like, are you really stuck? So like, how would you like to see, what would you like to do to get past that point? And so then, you walk the path. And one of the things that, for inspiration is that you always have to think, and I think, because if you aspire to something, that's great. I could aspire to be a chiropractor. It doesn't mean I'm ever going to be a chiropractor.
Right.
But if I'm inspired to be a chiropractor, is the reason that I do chiropractic, or I do what I do, is because I really want to help millions and thousands of people have better lives and have the right information in order to make better decisions so they know the next best step. So if I can leave somebody with that positive thought,
awesome.
It's just like, it just starts from the time that you get up to the time at the end of the day when you go to sleep. So if something happens, pause, go take a shower. Get all that icky energy off of you. Go take a shower, go meditate, go listen to Jim Rohn, go listen to Les Brown, listen to anybody that makes your heart sing. Do what makes you happy, then the rest of it will fall in place. I
love it. Dr. Pat, you've been so fun. I hope you had a great time on the Get Attitude podcast. Again, if you loved what you heard, go to Health Team Network. Dr. Pat will be there to serve you. She's got a great website with tons of information. Buy her book, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? Take the test. It's really a self-discovery book. And we want to thank you, Dr. Pat, for being on the Get Attitude podcast.
Thank you. My pleasure.